Welcome back to the Many Toys of, and to my American viewers, Happy Thanksgiving. Considering that we are in the middle of the holiday season now, with so many things to be thankful for and so many times of good tidings, I think that it is time that we look at one of the most celebrated and selfless characters in all of Transformers, the final guardian, Omega Supreme. Before we begin, a big thank you to Just a Dude on the Internet 2721, Hugh, Wild Piercy 1141, Bruticus, Obsidian X Prime X, Ben Boyee, Chris 24601, Silvershot AMV 5173, my producer, Dragon Lord 6484, The Bulbasaur Guy 5563, Matthias Marcelo Toledo, Athar V. Gupta 3310, Rowan Metzger 8640, Soundwave Fan 2010, Hudson LaRue 9832, Zayden D5Q, Peter Hemke 2648, Nova Reaper Gaming, Reno Varka, another one of my Patreon supporters, Zur NE5R1, Den 2002PH, Dogs Are Cool plus Turtles, Bulltastic, Mothman 20, Mementos Kudera 833, TF Fangeek, Ursa Major 48, Tevtonics, and an especially big thank you to Supremely Unknown. Supremely Unknown doesn't just have one of my favorite PFPs ever, and a great username, but they have been going to bat for Omega Supreme for nearly a full year at this point. At first glance, many people would probably write off Omega Supreme as a gimmick. He's the biggest and the strongest of the Autobots. Out of all the big dumb robots, he's the one with the most expensive toy. But Omega is so much more than that, and always has been. As early as G1, we found out the history of the Omega Sentinels. The Omega Sentinels had been the overseers of the Cybertronians. The Cybertronians at that point still the servants of their masters, the Quintessons. At first, the Sentinels were used to keep them in line, to attack the smaller Cybertronians. But after Alpha Trion was able to drive off the Quintessons, the Sentinels instead dedicated themselves to protecting their younger cousins. They were the ones to keep Cybertron safe, and through the Golden Age, they maintained the peace. That's until the Decepticons arrived. Megatron, using a single blast of his mighty fusion cannon, was able to down almost any Omega Sentinel that came his way. The Sentinels were no match for the fury and the unchecked power of the Decepticons, until only one remained. Omega Supreme, the last Sentinel to be brought online. That also explains his unique color scheme. The reason why he was the last is because he was the most powerful, and the Quintessons entrusted him to protect Crystal City, the most beautiful of all Cybertronian cities. While he was protecting Crystal City, he formed a deep friendship with the Constructicons, specifically their leader, Scrapper, until Megatron was able to force the Constructicons against their will to destroy their home, and take on the new form of Devastator. Devastator was nearly able to reprogram Omega Supreme himself, but instead only succeeded in stealing Omega Supreme's capacity for emotion. Now a husk of himself, trapped and alone, with no home to go back to, he eventually found himself on Earth alongside Optimus Prime's Autobots. But even there, he was more like a stranger. Too big to be around the Ark, he often stayed at some unspecified location close to, but still decently far away. And it's not like any of the Autobots were going out there to talk to him. Even Optimus Prime had a hard time relating to Omega because Omega was so distant, cold, emotionless. And yet every word he spoke dripped with sadness. He still remembered the friends he lost. He still remembered his lot in life. He was supposed to protect the beautiful city, and now the city lay in ruin. Now he's supposed to protect the Autobots. But even then, he falters. He can't win every battle. He can't be in every battle. And yet, he continues to try. Omega's original toy came out in 1985, and I have to say, it is a big dumb gimmick figure, but By God, what a beautiful big dumb gimmick figure. In vehicle mode, he is a train track, a tank, by the way that tank is motorized and can go along that track, as well as a rocket. And when he transforms, he's colossal. One of the single largest figures in the entire G1 toy range. And decently screen accurate. Now, don't get me wrong, a lot of the 1985 characters looked a whole lot more like the toys than the 1984 cast did. But even with that in mind, Omega looks really solid. His proportions are more or less on point. He would have great articulation if it weren't for his motorized gimmicks. You see, Omega Supreme can walk. That's the reason as to why you can't do anything with his hips or his legs, because he has to have those gears in working order. Otherwise, Omega Supreme just won't be able to take those steps that he wants. And when he walks, his arms move, his head moves, and of course, when you're in the vehicle mode, you have essentially a playset with Omega Supreme. You could put smaller cars along the track, or have the mini-bots hang out near the rocket. Omega Supreme was a great toy. Granted, somewhat limited as an action figure, but as a lights and sound machine that is able to follow you where you go, there's not many Transformers that can claim to be quite as dynamic as Omega Supreme. I kind of question putting this here because I consider him a different character, but technically, Omega Supreme's second toy came out in 1991 as Omega Supreme. Omega Supreme is not only the favorite toy of Vangelis, but is also an Action Master Elite, meaning that it's an Action Master that's actually able to transform. Granted, when he transforms, I don't really know what that's supposed to be. I suppose it could be his tank mode, but in all honesty, it looks a little bit more like a gun emplacement. And when he transforms, he's actually pretty solidly proportioned. He looks great for an early 90s Transformer and has a ton of articulation. Omega Supreme completely skipped over the Beast era, but returned in 2001 in the Super Collection figure range. Here, you could get a PVC figure of either his animation model or a pewter version. The same Omega came out again in 2003 in the Heroes of Cybertron line. In 2004, Omega Supreme would make his grand return to television, and unlike many characters in the Unicron trilogy, it was still the same boy. This wasn't a name dump or a reuse. Omega Supreme was still the ancient warrior, the guardian that helped the Autobots and would put his own body in danger if it meant saving even the smallest of his compatriots. Omega was a selfless guardian, and a close friend to Optimus Prime, so much so that the two of them were even able to combine into Omega Prime. Omega Supreme's toy is really cool too. It was a Supreme class figure, and I love how funky he is. He has a very asymmetric design, but that's because he's technically a duocon. He forms two separate vehicle modes. You could get the Omega Battleship, which is fine, or you could get the Omega Train! The Omega Train is awesome. I love the Omega Train. And then when they combine, they are the Cybertronian Armored Super Train! Because trains are the coolest of all vehicles, don't you know? And as the Cybertronian Armored Super Train, they're able to combine into his proper robot mode, which is weirdly well articulated for the day. Don't get me wrong, it's still a brick by our modern standards, but Omega Supreme can actually hold his head up as being one of the better articulated figures from Energon, especially amongst the Autobots. And let's not forget, that's on top of the fact that he is massive, nearly a foot tall, with two separate vehicle modes that also combine, with multiple guns and missiles, and he can still combine with Energon Optimus. And granted, the combination with Energon Optimus is very goofy looking. I just don't like the little pinhead. It's something Omega can do that doesn't interfere with any of the other things that make him so great on his own. When it comes to a combining figure, when it comes to a gimmick figure, this Energon Omega Supreme is one of the best. Hell, the figure was so great that later that year you could get a gold version, just because Takara wanted to show off how good this boy came out. But what if you wanted a tiny Energon Omega Supreme? Well, come 2006, you could get the Attactics version. Granted, he can't transform, he's just a tiny figurine, but they actually did capture his design pretty well, all things considered. 2008 had some of the highest highs, but also lowest lows for Omega Supreme. Starting out with the more mundane things, you could have gotten the Encore Omega Supreme, released only in Takara Tomy markets. This was the first proper re-release of that G1 Omega, and it's still a solid toy. There was also the Diamond Select Omega Supreme statue. A great statue. Limited to only 1,000 pieces, this is still one of the most screen-accurate versions of Omega ever. That's the issue. The toys weren't the high highs or the low lows. No, it's because what I believe is the best version of Omega Supreme debuted this year. Animated Omega Supreme. Here, the Omega Sentinels were not made by the Quintessons, and they were not made to be Guardians. The Omega Sentinels were designed by the Autobots as weapons of mass destruction, given very simple brains so that they would never be able to question what they were doing. Ultra Magnus and the Autobots, in their desperation, made giant child soldiers, nukes that didn't know how to tie their shoes, and then sent them onto the front lines. And they were all defeated, destroyed, killed, except for Omega Supreme. Omega Supreme survived, but just barely. And because the Autobots in a post-war Cybertron didn't have a place for such a veteran, they let him go into a coma, using his comatose body as a repair ship. This was all seen through the flashbacks of Ratchet. Ratchet, who had been instructed to raise Omega Supreme, to make him the ultimate soldier, instead treated Omega as a friend, a pupil, a son even. Omega Supreme came back online on Earth only to sacrifice himself again. He may not understand the weight of his own life, but he did understand that his purpose was to protect the Autobots, regardless if he got to walk away or not. Well, that's depressing. Why don't we just go ahead and look at third party? I need a second to recalibrate after realizing that I'm never going to get a toy of this character ever. Ever. The first third party Omega Supreme that I really remember coming across was the DX9 Gabriel, a masterpiece scale Omega. And he had issues. A lot of issues. No knock against DX9, they were one of the original masterpiece companies out there in third party, but I don't think they accounted for just how heavy Omega Supreme would have to be. As a result, DX9 Gabriel self-destructs, especially in his hips and where the vehicle modes are supposed to combine together in his midsection. It just turns to powder after so many years. If you wanted more of a War for Cybertron flavor Omega Supreme, there was the Planet X version of the guy. You'd have to get him in 2 packs. One pack would give you, essentially, parts of the vehicle mode, and the other part would give you the rest that you need to fill out the robot mode. It was just the only way that they could make it work for their price model structure. But if you got both packs, and if you got Omega Supreme fully intact, he's pretty solid. One of the first big hits from fan toys was Terminus Gigantus, and this guy is honestly really impressive. Filled with LED lights, beautifully painted and sculpted, and the transformation isn't half bad, especially for fans' toys. Again, the problem comes a lot more with just how big he is. Fans' toys did a much better job than DX9, but you still have to be very, very careful. This guy is nearly a decade old at this point, and as a result, you never know just how well these hinges are going to hold up. One of the few third-party Omega Supremes I actually own at the moment is the Mech Fans Toys Huge Dragon. I'm almost convinced this is a rip-off design, I just don't know from where. Because Mech Fans Toys, it's always a 50-50. It's either their own design or they ripped it off from someone. But I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt because I've not been able to find who they ripped it off from yet. Maybe this was one of their originals, and if it was, this is a really nice Omega Supreme. Hey, this is Ron in the editing booth. It looks like there's a company called Prangu Toys who's doing a Legend Scale Omega Supreme, and these renders make it look incredibly cartoon accurate and super slick. That said, it's only renders. Of course, if we're discussing Legend Scale, we could also talk about the New Age Michael. For whatever reason, a lot of people like naming Omega Supreme after archangels. Aside from that oddity, I do enjoy Michael. I think that New Age is always going to bring their level of expertise to any toy they do. The painting and sculpting is always going to be awesome. I will say that when he is in his alternate modes, he looks pretty rough. The track is very ramshackle, the tank is somewhat dull, and even the rocket looks really weird to me, I don't know. But granted, when he's in robot mode, he looks solid. Maybe with Omega Supreme, it's just a little bit of a give and a take, especially at this scale, and I think that New Age did as good as you could possibly hope. In 2013, he was included in the Platinum Edition line, specifically the Year of the Snake, and he's actually really cool. This is a decently heavy remold of the Energon Omega Supreme, just made to look a little bit more G1-ish. Now, this is supposed to be the War for Cybertron Omega Supreme, but don't try to kid yourself. Aside from the rocket arm, nothing here looks like Omega Supreme from War for Cybertron. But it does look like a really solid Generations take on Omega Supreme. Not what you remember from the cartoon, but a solid enough update. He's still good, solid, bulky, well-articulated, and the colors actually look halfway decent on him. We'd only have to wait 2 years for our next Omega Supreme, because in 2015 he was in the Creon class of 85. Granted, he's just a tiny Creon figure, but I'll be honest, I was not expecting them to ever do Omega Supreme, and this is actually pretty decent. I can't complain. But of course, we have to talk about 2019, because in 2019, the best Omega Supreme came out. That being the War for Cybertron Siege Omega Supreme. This Titan-class figure was the crown jewel of the Siege toy line, and I'm sure that some people will take umbrage with me calling this the best Omega, but I'll reiterate, I think it is the best Omega. I think it's better than any third-party version, I think it's better than any official version. He's massive, he's well-articulated, he does all the modes, and incredibly well at that. Granted, his track is a whole lot smaller, but I do still like how it turned out. I like that the tank is now on a much tighter perimeter around the rocket. And of course, his transformation is just a work of beauty. It calls back to how we saw him transform in the cartoon, and yet still makes it feel effortless. It's a good ebb and flow, and once you're in that robot mode, he's massive, he's proportionate, he's painted and sculpted to the nines. He very well might be the best Titan-class figure of all time, and if he isn't the best, he is certainly one of the best. Hell, this Omega was so good that in 2024, it was announced that he was going to be reissued, and I can't think of many toys that deserved a reissue more. This is still a crown jewel, a centerpiece of any collection. But that is not our most recent Omega Supreme. No. Our most recent Omega Supreme came out in 2025, and it was a Funko Pop. And I'll be honest, it's halfway decent. I do not like that the wings don't go over the shoulders. That's the one nitpick I have. But other than that, this is pretty solid. I like this one. And that's it. Omega Supreme is this wonderful dichotomy of a character. He was built for war, and yet he doesn't like war. He cherishes life, but he's supposed to only bring death. That's always been the story, but some continuities go further than others. For instance, in IDW, him and all the Omega Sentinels were used to bring genocide to planets. To be fair, that's not much worse than what they were used for in animated. They were also used to bring about genocide and destruction. The Omega Sentinels, unable to say no, unable to comprehend what they were doing, given only enough intelligence to kill and nothing more. Omega Supreme is tragic. He's tragic in the way that a character like Metroplex is tragic. But to me, the difference is, Metroplex feels bad for the people he can't save. but he is still able to have a fully functional life of his own. He comprehends what he does. What he does, he decided to do. No one made him. Omega doesn't have that. Omega was never given the ability to comprehend, was never given the ability to fully understand. He was told, go, kill. And by the time he realized that he didn't like killing, he had already killed countless people. Omega is a child forced into war, a child who was never given the ability to grow up, a child who was willingly made by a society that only needed him to crush out the people they didn't like. And once those people were gone, you didn't need the Omega Sentinels anymore. That's how the Quintessons treated them. That's how the Autobots treated them. If it weren't for characters like Optimus Prime and Ratchet, Omega Supreme would still just be a walking nuke. Or, even worse, he'd be alone on some planet, forced to live with the memories, but never be able to find a new life for himself. He's just a kid. A big kid. A big kid with massive guns. He has such ideas, he has such dreams, but no way to ever achieve them. He was made for one thing: desolation, destruction. And yet, he's found friendship, he's found purpose, he's found meaning, and maybe, someday, he can find peace. Guys, I just want to thank you all for sticking with me for so long. I say it a lot, but especially on a holiday like Thanksgiving, where we're supposed to be thankful for the things around us, I'm thankful for how things have worked out. You know, I'm just a hair under 14,000 subscribers. Think about that. This time last year, I was only at around 3,000 subscribers. There's almost 11,000 more of you guys now. I'm able to look at YouTube more and more as a potential career. It's still something I love to do. It's just able to be more and more in my life. I'm surrounded by people who encourage me and who give me good feedback, good criticism. I'm thankful to have all of you around. I say this all the time, especially to other Transformers content creators. I've been very lucky in the group of people that have found me. I'm very lucky that all of you have always been so kind to me. Have always been so supportive of the stuff I put out. Even the stuff I don't like, many of you make me feel like it was okay. I'm thankful to have you guys as my channel, as my community, as my audience, as my peers. And I hope that we just keep doing this. I don't know what next year is fully going to look like. I don't know if Many Toys Of is going to keep going at the pace it is now. It's always going to be around. But admittedly, I don't know if we're going to keep doing this. Oh, some weeks we'll have 2 big episodes. But at least for right now, in December and November, I want to give you guys as many big episodes as I can, especially before my move, because I know that when I do my move, things might have to shift around. I might have to go dark for a few weeks. But while I'm still in this location, while I'm still able to make videos at the same pace I have been, I want to give you guys as much as I can to thank you all for just being here and being on the channel, watching my dumb videos about the big stupid robots. And thank you for always giving me a reason to be excited. There's always some video coming out, some video to make. And that's only because you guys stuck around. So, I think I've already said it 50 times, but again, thank you. And hey, we'll just have to see what we get up to next time.